This is episode 24 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Think Global. Think Global is a business advisory firm working with women entrepreneurs around the globe to scale their businesses to the next level. Today, I'd like to welcome Betsy Aimee Cardenas. Betsy Aimee is a millennial writer living and capturing the zeitgeist of her generation. She writes about politics, careers, parenting, lifestyle, and the intersection of these topics for a variety of publication. Her writing has appeared on Marie Claire, ForbesWomen.com, The Muse, and Romper. She's a regular contributor for the millennial generation for the millennial parenting site Mom.me. She also writes a column called Intersections about the personal and the professional for BeVisible Latina, the fastest growing social media platform for millennial Latinas. Recently, she was commissioned to write pieces for Project Inye about her experiences as a first-generation American. Betsy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. So excited.
I love, just based on reading your bio, I just picture you just at your computer writing all day, every day, right? Is that what it looks like?
I have a full-time job as well.
Okay.
I work at a nonprofit doing community relations. So it does look like that. It looks like me being on the computer a lot. It involves some really early mornings, like 5 a.m. Before my toddler wakes up. And it also involves some pretty late nights and a very, sometimes very overscheduled life.
Yeah. I think so many can relate to that, especially as working moms. Yes, we have the job, then we have the mom, and then we have these other projects that we want to be really involved in. And the only time to do it is the early morning or the late evenings. But I think that really shows your commitment and your passion for that piece, that you're willing to wake up early or stay up late to do it.
Definitely.
So how did you become a voice for Latina millennials?
I think one of the things that happened to me is that I was working as an advocate. I've done a lot of political work, a lot of work on campaigns. I've worked on behalf of causes that I really care about. And a lot of that work is really elevating the voices of others, is elevating the lives of people who are often unseen in the political process. And so a few weeks after having my son, I was actually laid off from a job that I had. And I think that took me on a journey where I realized that I was advocating for the rights of others. I was often elevating the voices of others, but really hadn't quite found my own voice. And so that sent me on a journey where I said, I'm home with a baby. I don't have my work anymore, which for a long time had really defined me. And it wasn't just a job for me. It was tied to who I was. And it still is. But at that point, I had to really redefine, like, I'm this new person, I'm a mother, I'm home now, I don't have a full-time job to go to. So it really led me on a path where I was finally able to pursue my writing in a more deliberate way. Before that, I had been published a few places, but I had never thought, like, this is my vocation, this is my journey. And I think at that point, I finally had the time to sit down and say, like, this is really what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And so that set me off on a journey that involved, honestly, a lot of rejections, a lot of me pitching and not getting responses or getting told, this is great, but not for us.
Isn't that one of the hardest ones? Like, if it's so great, then why isn't it for you?
And that was happening simultaneously with me looking for permanent full-time work, and also being rejected on that end, and then being a new mom, and also just feeling like, if any of you are parents, or you've had this experience, even if you're not parents, where everything you thought you knew just doesn't even matter anymore, and things are not under your control anymore. So I really experienced a reawakening and a really big shift in how I think about things and how I approach life. And failure isn't something that scares me anymore. The rejections don't scare me anymore, because it really means that you're trying. If you're not being rejected, it means you're not trying and you're playing it safe. And that's just not how I think we should approach life.
Well, that is probably my favorite sort of nugget of wisdom I have heard in a long time. Like, it's okay to be rejected. And if you're not, then you're not pushing those boundaries and you're playing it safe. Well, I love that. You know what that reminds me of? So Brene Brown has that quote, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. And I feel like your story really is a solid example of that, of you owning it and walking in it. This is a situation, and just in your career span, there has been some pretty tough economic situations, and you're owning that and sharing it and sharing what it means to be in this millennial space. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think I love Brene Brown as well, and she has an amazing TED Talk on vulnerability, which is how I got into her. Yeah. And if you haven't listened, you really need to. And I think I felt being vulnerable was related only to my personal life, only to falling in love or having tough conversations with family, but it also really does relate to our professional lives, because we really have to put ourselves out there and, you know, be a little scared sometimes and push outside that comfort zone. So I think Brene Brown is great and very helpful in the personal and the professional.
Right. So when you're getting, so you're writing these pieces of content, and then you're sending them to various outlets, essentially pitching yourself to have your work published. When you get those no's, how do you internalize it, and how do you sort of keep going? How do you keep moving forward after hearing no's? Like, what is your tip or trick or mindset or mantra around that?
Well, first I want to say that it's disappointing. I mean, yeah. I definitely have tips and tricks, and I think one of those is to not, to your point, not internalize that, not take it as a personal reflection on who I am as a person, but rather like, this story has if it's a story or an angle, like this story has a home, this story has a place, this just isn't the place. And think of it that way, rather than like, I suck, my writing is terrible, or no one cares about this story, because many writers can attest to this. Like, you can pitch something somewhere and it gets rejected, and maybe a year later it finds a home. You know, I have a story that I've been trying to find a home for about a year now. And I still truly believe that that story has a moment and has a time. And sometimes something will happen. I had written a story about, related to the election and Donald Trump. And I had written the story, and it didn't have a home. And then suddenly there was a news item on a particular day, and it found a home. So I think it's really not taking these things personally. And I know that is much easier said than done. But you have to believe in your story. You have to believe in who you are, and you have to believe that there's other people who want to read about it and are going to relate to it. And there's going to be a home for it.
Just that little piece of framing, this story has a home, but maybe the home isn't this place. Like, that takes you and the ego and the emotion completely out of it. Like, I love that. And in the entrepreneurial space and the startup world, I mean, I think any of us can relate. It's a lot of pitching and a lot of relationship building and meeting new people and putting yourself out there. And I think if we just frame it how you said, is maybe this isn't the home. So if it's not the right client, well, that's fine. Maybe it's just not the right home, and there will be a home for them. Well, that is awesome insight.
Thank you. Yeah. And like I said, I say that, and I'm honest about it, that sometimes it takes me a few days. I bounce back. So don't feel bad if you are feeling the rejection, and then feel guilty for feeling bad about the rejection. It's totally normal, and it just takes a few days, and it takes practice and getting used to it. And I relate it to dating, right? Like they say, you if you're dating online, you shouldn't just focus on one person at a time, but you should date multiple people. So I feel that way about pitching. Like,
interesting.
Have multiple projects that you're moving at the same time. That way you don't feel so bad, or you don't have time to dwell on those feelings. But again, this all came to me after this really big experience of being laid off and losing my job and feeling this financial insecurity. And that's also what keeps me going. I feel like whether or not we have a business or a product that we're selling, we all need to approach our careers with an entrepreneurial mindset. And have multiple sources of income, always keep meeting people. You and I met on BeVisible, a social platform for Millennial Latina. So always keep searching and always keep trying to build that network, making new connections and meeting new people.
That's so interesting because I formerly was in more of a corporate marketing job that it truly wasn't fulfilling for me. But one of the things that was always in the back of my head is, what if I get laid off? Because I was in that job when the economy tanked in 2008. What if I get laid off? I'm losing this income. And someone told me, it was a few years into this, once I had already started this company, someone told me, they're like, the best way to protect yourself from that is to have multiple things going on. So although you're scared to lose that income, you have more job security when you have multiple revenue streams than you do in this corporate sort of job. One decision can take away your whole income, whereas if you have multiple streams, chances of all of those failing simultaneously on the same day is probably not going to happen. So that's a good way to look at it too. And I love having that entrepreneurial spirit of let's expand and have multiple things going.
Yeah, and really thinking about yourself, thinking about yourself as a brand, no matter what you do, if you're a marketing professional, you're still a brand and you still have a unique set of skills that you bring to the table, and really recognizing that and owning that. I think everybody should have a personal website and be putting their thoughts on there on whatever it is, whatever field they're focusing on, to really build that expertise. So that's
really cool. So if you had a list of best kept secrets, like websites, books, TED Talks, what would you recommend and why?
So one of the things I would recommend is, so the Just Lively Show. This is a podcast that has really helped change my mindset, and I've learned a lot from the guests. And she features a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who are just really living life on their own terms and taking charge of their personal and their professional lives. So that's one thing I really love. I also love Brené Brown. And really, I was reading an article earlier this week, and it was the 14 tips of self-made millionaires. And there was a lot of really good nuggets, but one of those was that they're always reading something for personal development. So I'm always reading something for personal development. I'm always reading articles. I wake up every morning and I look through social media like everybody else. So totally guilty.
Not immune anymore.
Not the best habit to have. And I have an app on my phone called, I think it's Instapaper, and you can actually save articles, and they'll be there, and then whenever you have a break, whenever you have time, you can read them. So I always archive.
Oh, that's cool.
Me. Twitter is also a great source for me to find articles that are beneficial. Business Insider is a good one. I also love this magazine, which is standing right here. It's called The Great Discontent, and it also features people who have also made careers in the creative fields, which is something that I'm personally interested in finding out more about. I think I graduated college. I was the first person in my family to graduate college, and I had this idea that I was going to have this very corporate life, and I was going to wear a suit every day, and I was going to have that security. I was going to have that job, and this, climb this very traditional ladder. And what I've discovered about myself is that's not who I am. That's not where I'm the happiest. So I'm really interested in learning about people who are doing things differently or doing things on their own terms. And like I said, I think losing that security at a point in my life really made me feel like, okay, there's people out there who are doing it, and I need to find out who they are.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I want to mention is I really can't underscore the power of personal connections with people, and really not being afraid to reach out to people. If you see someone interesting, follow them on Twitter, send them an email. You never know. They might respond. They might not, but sometimes people actually do respond. I had a friend who isn't a writer, and she wanted to get published in HuffPost. So she wrote directly to Ariana Huffington.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, like, oh, you did. I was like, who was your editor? Who did you work with? And she was like, what do you mean? I just wrote to Ariana. And she actually got published.
Wow. Well, that is a bold way to go. Good for her.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we want to ask for permission.
Yeah.
Really, sometimes you just got to go out there and grab it. I totally deviated from the question, but
so that's really good. And I want to talk about that because I think so many people are always scared to do that initial outreach. But the way I see social media and all these opportunities that we have just online now is the barriers are gone. If you want to talk to Ariana, talk to her. You know what I mean?
You can try.
Try. And So I think that's a really good message to put out there is why not try? Like, worst that's going to happen is they may not respond, basically, or they may say, hey, I'm not interested, but why don't you speak with one of my editors? Or they may do the thing of, it's great, not for us at the moment. There's not like, I think it feels bigger and scarier than what the action actually is.
Yeah, and I think for me, the internet is great because if I had to go up to these people in person, it would be a little scarier. Although that is something I'm practicing, and I put myself out there and go to conferences to do the person-to-person relationship because that's super helpful. But I've made great professional and even personal friendships just by reaching out to people on Instagram and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. Are you interested in featuring me? Or can we, grab coffee? The possibilities of connecting with people are endless. And one of the things I really love about BeVisible is that I've connected with a lot of other great women that the site attracts, and it's led to me being featured on Project Aimee. And so I think really using these social networks online, whether it's Facebook, whether it's something that's more formal like BeVisible, it's just super helpful and instrumental to expanding your network. And that's how you're going to hear about the connection with the editor. That's how you're going to hear, a lot of people don't post jobs anymore. They hire from people within the network. So that's how you're going to kind of get that insider scoop. So that was another lesson for me is when I first got laid off, I didn't want to reach out to people because I was ashamed.
Right.
I was ashamed that even though I was told that I was being laid off purely for financial and structural reasons, and I know my boss would give me glowing recommendations, I was still ashamed to admit that failure because it still felt like a personal failure at that time. So I didn't reach out to people. So I know I missed job opportunities. I know I missed certain things. And once I got out of that mindset, things really changed.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Just as we wrap up, one thing I'd like to close on is, so we have all these opportunities in connecting with people through various platforms, but we know that relationships is so much of the game. And, when you reach out, there may not be an opportunity right now. And that might be the truth of it and the real story. What are some things that you do after the initial reach out, if the answer is no or not right now? What do you do to keep in touch and build that relationship?
That's a great question. The answer is it varies. I always try to think of these relationships not as what can I get out of them immediately, but what value can I offer them? Mm-hmm. Hey, I saw this great article that I think you'd like. Take a look. Just really thinking of how you can be of value to people, or hey, I know this person who I think would be great for you to connect with. And like I said, you may get a response, you may not get a response, and just be okay with the fact that you're not going to connect with everybody. Some people you won't get past that initial meeting and nothing will come of it, and some people it will come more naturally, and those are the people who frankly are going to be more willing to help you out anyway. So that's kind of how I approach it. You throw all these balls in the air, and some will stick, and some you won't. But you still put it out there.
Mm-hmm. And I like that. Just positioning yourself of how can you help them? What can you give? What makes their day easier? What did you find that maybe they didn't find? You send it to them. So that's really great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Betsy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Bye.